So today's topic is the 8-step COVID-19 survival toolkit for the modern insurance agency. So I think we would agree that things perhaps are beginning to settle down into a little sense of stability. So in other words, this is what I mean by that the chaos, the disruption is beginning to sort itself out. No doubt, as leaders, you've made some decisions about how you're going to operate. And so now we're at a point where we've got to figure out how are we going to move into this future? How are we going to move into this future in a way that is that at least gives us the highest probability of success? And I would say that at this point, the next 90 days matter, probably in many ways, perhaps more than any other 90 days that you have had as a leader in this industry. I want to share with you where I'm getting some of the information that really informed me about this toolkit and informed my thinking about how agencies can not just survive, but really thrive as we approach this period. So I've had a number of conversations. You probably have listened to some of those conversations, as you know, or perhaps likely know. I'm the host of the Connected Insurance podcast. It gives me the privilege of not having to be the smartest guy in the industry, just knowing the smartest people in the industry. And so that if there's a question I don't know the answer to, I reach out to somebody who will. And because we have a good audience, I'm fortunate in that I'm able to attract the best names in the industry. Dr. Robert Hartwig on the impact of COVID on the economy, the industry, and the agency force. Brad Rubin, the president. Bob Hartwig was the president of the III Insurance Information Institute. Brad Rubin, the president and founder of Archway Computers, on technology issues, particularly as they relate to the security of your technology as it goes remote. Bill Wilson, former VP of Research and Education at the Big I, on the various coverage issues that you're going to be facing. Gene Salvatore was the Senior Vice President of Communications at the III and has guided literally hundreds or more industry leaders as they prepared for major television appearances and things like that. Her area of expertise, leadership in crisis. David Heinemeier Hansson, the best-selling author of a number of books, including the book Remote, Office Not Required. Also, the co-CEO of 37 Signals, creator of Basecamp collaboration software. Very recently, I think we published this about a week or so ago, my interview with the CEO of Applied Systems. You should listen to that. This is, if you haven't listened to these conversations, I really want to encourage that. Taylor gave a great insight on how he views the state of the industry and what agents need to do now. And David Smith, the CEO of Global Financial Futures, a futurist who guides industry strategy based on his assessment of major significant trends that are affecting our industry and other industries. So I want to give just a little bit of background, and then I'm going to dive into this. This is not going to take long. And again, please ask me any questions that you want. The intent behind this is that while there is chaos, chaos can be confusing, and it can be complicated, and the waters can be difficult to read. My intent with this toolkit is to reverse that and to provide some simplicity in your thinking. And most of what I'm going to be sharing with you is on purpose, not revolutionary. And I realize that leaders inclined towards action, no doubt you're feeling and asking yourself, what do I need to do? But I want to encourage that before we take a lot of action, we think first. So that's the purpose of this exercise. And then I basically, I think because of the nature of this crisis, we have one time to get this right. Okay. I mean, you can make some minor mistakes, But when 90 days is gone, 90 days is gone. So we've really got one time to do this thing right. And then I would say I agree with so many of the industry experts that I've spoken to, that this is the watershed moment in the history of the agency channel. That I've been talking about trends and forces for over 10 years that are affecting the economy, that are affecting the industry, and certainly affecting the agency channel. I've been urging agency leaders to take that step forward to become a quote unquote modern insurance agency. And clearly part of what we're seeing with COVID is that we can no longer take our sweet time. That now, if we had speed before, we've got speed 10x now. And so I think what we'll see, as we've seen over the last 10 years, a number of agency owners just not wanting to kind of embrace the current age with the current technologies, current changes in consumer behavior, current methodologies of marketing. And so a lot of them, they perpetuated, they got their value and they're out, or a lot of them are sitting around in their seat, waiting for the day that retirement comes. Unfortunately, valuations are down. They should have sold in January. So the rest of us are still alive in this industry. Alex, I want to launch the first poll. So I have a question for you. So if you would take just a few seconds and answer this question, I will give you the results. Okay? And the question is, if I saw you and asked if I could see your COVID action plan, could you show it to me? All right. In other words, actually, yeah, like here it is, Michael. I gotta show it to me. Piece of paper, right? I don't care where it is. In your pocket is not a bad place. You've heard the old stories, put it on your bathroom mirror or whatever. Yeah, you can minimize that if you want to. So boom, I'm going to close the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 89% of those of you who are here today couldn't show me. And look, I can't blame you, but this is an opportunity now for us to get really clear on where we're going. So let's go back to the slideshow. All right. So again, this is simple. It's about simplicity. It's about giving thought before we take action. It's about doing it right, because we don't get do-overs on this. There are no mulligans in crisis, and recognizing the importance of this moment. So I've got 8 things that I want you to think about. I'm going to go through these fairly rapidly. Ask me questions as they arise. Number 1, make a short list. The emphasis being on short. Your success right now depends on you doing a few things and doing them well. You'll find some of those things on this list, which we're going to review. There's a lot going on and you're going to be easily distracted. The world is going to be demanding your time. The world is going to be pulling at you in lots of ways. Those things to do. There'll be emotional issues that you have to deal with. Your team will have issues that need to be dealt with. There are going to be things that you have never dealt with before. So we want to make sure that you've got clarity of thinking, and that comes from having a short list. So I really do recommend. This is I mean, I like writing things down anyway, because I think, as I've said before, the hand is wired to the brain is wired to the hand. This is one worth writing down. And frankly, having it in your pocket is not the worst idea in the world, like taking it so seriously that it is always with you, because you've got 90 days to succeed on this. It'll help keep you focused. And I want to recommend, read it regularly. And there's some things on this list, as we'll see in a few moments. Once they're done, you can cross them off. But there are also some things that they're kind of never done. And I'll show you those in a minute. So make a list and follow it. Item number 2, the inner warrior. As I said earlier, a lot is going to be demanded of you as a leader. I've had this issue lately. This is a conversation I've had with a number of my clients that this is pre-COVID. Okay, so I've had this conversation, let's say in the 2 quarters prior to COVID. more than usual, that I was recognizing that they wanted to get up, from one level to the next level. And it really wasn't just a matter of like, throwing on a marketing technique or some cool new thing. They really had to transform the agency, and that required a level of leadership that they didn't have before. And it really required them to think things through. Now that leadership is required, which we're going to talk about in a moment, but also there's an awful lot on you. No doubt, if you're like me, you have some anxieties. You may be worried about your children. You may be worried about your grandchildren. You may miss the heck out of your grandchildren, things like that. You may feel that the isolation turns into, from time to time, some darker thoughts, some lonelier thoughts. So the inner warrior means take care of yourself. You will serve as a leader. You will serve better if you serve strong. So do whatever you need to do to get right, whatever that means to you. Eating right, sleeping right, exercising right. Shoot, put your mixtape together, and listen to the stuff that lifts you up right now. This is a time to be self-aware, to be vigilant, and like they say, when turbulence hits an airplane, which is what we're in right now, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because you don't want to pass out when it's now time to put it on your kids. So there's a health element to this, which I know we don't talk about very often, but it's important for a leader. Make your health plan. It's physical, it's mental, it might be spiritual. Take care of yourself and be vigilant about that. Number 3, the issue of leadership. In times of crisis, people tend to look outside themselves for answers. So I want to spend a moment on that. That's something that Dr. Bob Cialdini talks about in his work on influence, is that when times are normal, people can look within themselves often to find out where they need to go, what they need to do. But all of a sudden, boom, in unfamiliar times, which is one of the characteristics of crisis, they start looking for answers and they start looking outside themselves. Well, you got a couple of constituencies that are looking to you, your team. So let's talk about that for a moment. Your team needs to know that you're somebody that they can trust, that you will help keep them safe in unsafe times, and that you have a strategy to successfully get through this. Imagine that you're navigating a sail ship in rough waters, and storm hits. There are cross currents, there's winds, there's, all of the things that could put you in danger, right? Everybody on that crew wants to know that the navigator knows what they're doing. So how do you deal with this? To help them feel safe, 1, always tell the truth. Because if you don't, they're going to find out about it. And then the trust is broken, and then the relationship is damaged. So tell the truth, and then let them know that you've got a way, to the best of your ability, that you have some strategy to get them through this to a bright future, and be realistic about it. And then, of course, you've got your customers, and customers are anxious. They have the same emotions that everybody else has. Some anxiety, a sense of uncertainty, worry, concern. They've got questions. So ideally, hopefully all of you have been in communication with them up until this point. Don't stop. They want to know that they can rely on you. I've said this more than once. For those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, for example, which, gosh and gollies, you should do, I've said this more than once, that the modern agency was so much better prepared for this crisis than everybody else. And one of the reasons they had the tools to communicate effectively with their customer base. They also had other things going on, which we'll talk about in a moment. So you want to be sure that you're crystal clear on what your message is, and you want to, and it should be a relatively simple message. And then once you say it, don't cross that one off. That's a message that gets delivered over and over. It evolves slightly over time, but the message sinks in with frequency and repetition. And of course, you want to show the courage of your own conviction. You're the leader. Technology. So this is a big issue, and it does affect a lot of elements of the industry. As I said, modern insurance agencies were the most ready for this crisis. They had the tool to communicate with customers. They likely had the tools to support remote work. In fact, a lot of my clients have remote workers already. In fact, I spoke with a client a couple of days ago. He hasn't had an office in 7 years. The entire thing is remote. And he told me he was moving from the East Coast to out here in the desert. It doesn't really matter because the entire agency is remote. We can talk more about that later, but you've got issues to deal with in regards to remote, and there are a couple of them. The first one is, excuse me, you've got computers that in many cases, they're just being tossed out into communities and neighborhoods all over the place. There's security issues that you need to deal with. You want to make sure that there is secure login, that there are appropriate password protocols, that you've got necessary virus protection, that you are training your team in the contemporaneous online scams, because when issues like this arise, there are also bad actors who are going to try to take advantage of team members. There are some older operating systems that clearly have security gaps. So there are, and I've got a checklist. So I'm going to give you that checklist when we're done here. And then there are productivity issues. So decisions have to be made. I've got, I spoke with a colleague a couple of weeks ago who said, oh, everybody's remote, we're doing fine, but now they're asking, are we going to be remote when the crisis is over? And he's thinking, oh my God, I hope not. And I said, Alan, please, I mean, do what you need to do that's best for your business, but don't let bricks and mortar determine your business strategy. Let your business strategy determine the appropriate role of bricks and mortar. So, and I want to stress a future-looking point here. The demand, the opportunity for remote work has been available for more than 10 years, okay? I've been remote off and on for 25. Somewhat embarrassed to admit that I really didn't think of remote for my team much until just under 10 years ago. And then when I sold Agency Revolution, it was a remote company. Almost everybody was remote. Even the people who worked in Bend were remote. We had people from Maine to Vietnam. I mean, and literally lots and lots of places in between. It was a remote company. There are certain advantages to it, but think about this. The crisis, winds down at some point in the future, and the opportunities for remote work are now 10x what they were before. And you have to ask yourself, are you going to be the guy who's not offering that to your team, but your competitors are? Think about that. So you've got security issues and you've got remote work issues. Secure your remote technology immediately. And then you need to get good at remote. Alex, I have one more question for the audience here. It's really a poll. I am completely confident in our ability to work remotely. Completely true, somewhat true, not very true, not true. I'm going to close this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the results are 36% of you are really feel that that is completely true, and 64% think somewhat true. That's it. Okay, so we're moving in the right direction. I'm pleased to hear that, and I generally tend to think that an audience for my training is not representative of the industry. Okay, so we're usually a little bit ahead of the industry, but I'm thrilled to hear that with this audience here. Next item, there are insurance issues that you're going to have to deal with, and no doubt you probably already have. And at this point, you probably know what they are. Business income is probably the big one, business interruption. People are going to be asking, doesn't the virus cause physical damage? Or what happens if we're shut down by civil authority? There are going to be other questions related to liability. Workers' comp is now also emerging as a very big issue. And then, you probably need to be asking yourself whether or not you need to be proactive with some product offerings, some coverage offerings like cyber, because now you've got employees who are or you've got customers who've got employees who are now spread all over the community, there are coverage issues that are going to be emerging. So my advice on this is one, to have an appropriate answer for these questions. I think in many cases, the experts that I spoke to said, like on issues of business interruption, direct them to the carrier, because in that case, this is a delicate issue and the contract is with the carrier. But also prepare those responses and train your team, because they're going to be getting the questions. You're not going to be getting the questions in most cases. Item number 6 is a bit of an uncomfortable one for some people. We know that some agencies are going to suffer more than others, and it's going to have to do largely with the nature of their customer base. And so, you know, we've seen this before in recessions. Like in the last recession, I had customers who almost lost it because they were very heavily focused on construction, and boom, how quickly did that die? Now, you know, clearly I've got lots of customers with some focus on hospitality, restaurants and bars, taverns, travel, so on and on. So some will be affected. And what I'm suggesting, I've been through this. I've been through situations. I had a situation 25 years ago when I was hired to merge 2 organizations, both of whom were in just crap shape financially. And so I had my accountant run 45-day cash flows, you know, like every week, boom, right? And at first it was just 45 days because I could see it at the beginning. It's like, I only got 45 days left and then we're out of money, okay? And fortunately, with good marketing, we extended that and then ended up getting out of the hole and creating tremendous value. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is run those scenarios. Look, it's been a couple of months now. You're going to begin to get some sense of issues that may affect client retention, issues that affect, you know, let's say payroll, you know, customer payroll and how that affects revenue, niches that are more vulnerable than others. So some people will need to make adjustments. It's a difficult situation. It may affect people who work for you. You have to do the right thing. Boom. Number 7 and number 8 they do fit closely together. Number 7 is strategy. Like the navigator on a sailing ship, one of my favorite metaphors. You need a short-term strategy to get through this successfully. So boom. So think about. I'll use that metaphor one more time. All right. So you know, if a ship is hit by a seriously threatening, life-threatening storm, then issue number 1 is surviving that. And to some extent, there's a little bit of that going on. Though I think our industry has, and your agency probably has, lots of shock absorbers built into it. As opposed to some other industries. I've got colleagues, obviously, in the marketing industry. I've got colleagues who market to restaurants. Boom, tough business. I've got colleagues who market to dentists. Boom, tough business. There are a lot of shock absorbers built in here, but you know, don't take those for granted. So we have a short-term strategy, and the idea is to get through that as strong as possible. But then also we want the long-term strategy to be set up by the short-term strategy. So we're moving in the right direction. I had a conversation with a personal friend who is the #1 equity fund manager in Canada. So for the last 30 years, he's made a considerable living based on his knowledge of trends in the industry, trends in industries, trends in the economy, and looking for, you know, how things are going to, like where are the updrafts? That's what we're looking for. Where are the updrafts that we can ride up, and where are the downdrafts that are going to push us down? And you know, Mark and I kind of came to the consensus that in a time of crisis, most of your energy, focus, and resources on the short term, let's say 80%. But you got to put 20% on where you want to go, where you think it's going to go, where you think that trend is going to be. There's some that I think are relatively easy. as I said earlier, I think it's relatively easy to predict that that more employees are going to be remote, and that more employers are going to offer that as an option. So that's a strategic something of strategic interest. I think it's a trend that we're like now. The customer base is going to be, they're questioning, is this the right place to be? Is this a good place to be? So delivering what the modern customer wants as opposed to, 1995, these are some long-term strategic interests. So ideally, you want to align your short-term strategy, which is survival, with your long-term strategy, which is thriving in the future. And then item number 8, excuse me, is marketing, which I think has been I would say that for the last 8 weeks, this hasn't been foremost on most people's mind, but now it's, now people are talking about it, okay? So agents are asking, is this a good time to sell? Well, it's been a couple of months. People need protection, but a lot of marketers are shifting their focus. There are a few things that they're doing. I mean, clearly one is tone. This is a serious time, and we need to understand the anxiety and uncertainty that the marketplace feels subjectively, and so that's one shift. Another shift is that a lot of marketers have seen that perhaps this could vary from market to market, niche to niche, but perhaps people are overwhelmed, and maybe just they're not looking to switch their insurance right now. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, depending on your relationship with your marketplace, what the niche is that you're engaged in. But so a lot of marketers, and I'll share my strategy with you on this. A lot of marketers are choosing not to focus. There's a lot you can do in marketing, right? So let me remind you of this. You can get leads, you can get customers, you can optimize those customers and get more policies per customer, or you can focus on retention, which is creating longer and longer relationships. So those are all good things. Well, a lot of marketers have decided that customer acquisition, perhaps we could put that on hold, and what we can focus on is audience expansion. In other words, creating and building a list, and creating our following, our network in the marketplace, and then nurturing that list. So when the time is right, we're the obvious choice. I have done that myself. I chose to defer a product launch, which was scheduled for April, for a couple of reasons. One, I felt I'd probably get a diminished response. Two, I felt that that I could deliver more to the industry by not focusing on that product launch, but to attempt to, for a period, really just deliver as much value as I possibly can. So I've been focusing on audience expansion. So this stuff doesn't happen overnight, but created the COVID 8-step toolkit, and I'm thrilled now to have an expanded list of people who trust me, people who follow me, people who look to me for advice and guidance. So there are a lot of things that you can do that are different in marketing than perhaps what you were thinking, which is, most people think is, how can I get more customers? Okay. Those customers will come when they jump into your funnel and you deliver consistent, overwhelming value. So my last question, the COVID crisis will likely separate the winners and the losers in the industry. I'm just asking you to please let me know if you're interested in learning about the most effective strategy and marketing actions that your agency can take to win right now. They are different. The kinds of things, the kinds of techniques, the kinds of thinking, the kinds of strategy that I will be sharing will be different probably than I would have in January or early February. It's a different time. So let me share the results of that. Not terribly surprised. Okay, everybody's interested in that, and I think I do think there's a role for me to play that in that area. So, and I want to get you something. Okay, so if you need to leave early, I hope you don't. You can download this tool at www.8stepcovidtoolkit.com. 8stepcovidtoolkit.com. So this is my example, okay? So number one, I want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Whatever it is that makes you feel healthy and not stressed, that's critical. Number two, you've got leadership issues to deal with, and as a leader, you need to clarify your message so that it is simple and that is compelling and inspirational. So figure out what it is and say it over and over again, both for your team and for your customer base. There are probably some key people that are either in your network or that are on your team that you need to have meaningful conversations with. If you haven't done them, have those conversations. And in some cases, if there hasn't been some emotional element to the conversations, there should be. This is a time where we need to draw on our deepest emotional intelligence. So let's all do that. There are technology issues that you have to deal with. So boom, little checklist for you, mostly supplied by my friend Brad. So make sure you're taking care of your remote login, that your operating system is secure, yada, yada, yada. Be aware of what the teams that you're going to use, the technologies you're going to use to support remote, and the technologies that you're going to use to communicate with the marketplace, both your customers and with the marketplace, the broader marketplace. No doubt, like we all do, you'll identify some technologies that you might have or maybe not have, but that you can get better at using, that you can master, okay? There are insurance issues. Get clear on what they are and check that box off, that you've trained your staff on how to respond. Again, there are financial issues that we all have to deal with. Let's do that with a clear, sober eye. And then there's strategic issues. So you want to make sure, again, that you're taking care of not just the short term, but you're setting yourself up for the long term. So we've got this 90-day period where ideally we're aligning ourselves for the future. I will give you my best assessment. This is based on, again, my own research and conversations with people who have more expertise in this than I do, is that in spite of all of the efforts to kind of open up or reopen the economy, this virus is not going to go away. In fact, I read, what was it, Fauci this morning, who said the virus will probably never go away. It's just there. What will happen is, as a species, we will learn immunity to it, either because we're exposed and live or die, or we get a vaccination. And so you need to at least consider and come to your own conclusion about that, and consider the fact that this is not going to be a normal summer and then next fall. Particularly as people come more and more in contact with other people. Now we're seeing spikes again in this country and other countries where when there's an opening up, there's a resurgence in the virus. So you have to consider that's an issue for your long-term strategy. And then marketing. Decisions need to be made regarding marketing. Are you going to focus on audience expansion? That's a bit of a, in my 5-level model, that's a level 4 skill. That's not, that's not for, well, I'm going to do training on it. So we'll figure out how to make that as simple and easy as possible for you. What are you going to do to get new customers? So boom, this really is about getting clarity and making sure that you have focus, that you have mental and appropriate physical focus, and that your team is focused on those things that will bring you the greatest success. So at the end of the tool, I do like to keep it very simple. There's an opportunity for you to identify the 3 most important things you're going to take care of. Take care of them. I do want to encourage you, please, because I kind of treat my LinkedIn as a little bit of like almost kind of a semi-daily blog. Connect with me on LinkedIn. That is one way where we can at least stay in touch with each other. And when I've got something that I want to share, like an upcoming training or webinar, you'll know about that. As I said, this is a no frills, no hassle, no ad webinar. I want to say thanks for joining us. And I also want to say, please be safe, take care of your family, and love them. Talk to you later.